Now, in the last lesson, we talked about the various adjustment tools inside Photoshop and how you can utilize them to make very simple adjustments to your images. Now, in this lesson, I want to talk about something a little bit more involved when it comes to making adjustments, and that's something called adjustment layers. Now, if you remember the last lesson, when I went to apply an adjustment, let's go in here and let's do a simple adjustment. I'm going to go back into and do the curves. And let's say I wanted to make this image a little bit darker. I'm just going to go in here and just kind of pull that curve down a little bit. And it gets to a point and I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now what I've done is I have permanently altered my image. Once you start going and correcting your images, you are essentially destroying them. I know that sounds weird. You're trying to fix them, but you're in a sense destroying them at a pixel level. And if I go in here and make any other further adjustments, I'm simply stacking them on top of that and ultimately making the image a little bit more worse. Now, a few versions back in Photoshop, they introduced a concept called adjustment layers, which allows you to non-destructively apply adjustments to your images and have a little bit more control over them. So down here in the layers panel, right down here at the bottom, you see this middle icon here. If I click on it, you notice we've got all those very same adjustments that you saw earlier that we applied. Well, let's say I wanted to do that same curves adjustment, and if I select it, it's going to do two things. Well, it didn't open up the curves dialog that you saw a while ago. What it did open up is the adjustments panel, and this is something brand new to Photoshop CS4, which allows you to actually apply the corrections in real time through a panel instead of an open window in which you'd have to click OK and do all that other stuff. But also notice what happened in my layers panel. Let me go and drag this out so you can see what's going on. It actually is now a layer. It's called an adjustment layer. So if I turn this off, we don't really see a change because we haven't made an adjustment yet. So let's take that curve and actually bring it down. So now you can see it's applying that same adjustment I did a moment ago, but now it's doing it through this layer. I can toggle this layer on and off and actually turn off that feature, just like that. And we can go in here and make these adjustments anytime. Earlier when I made that curves adjustment, just going into the image menu and making that, it was permanent. I couldn't go back in there and modify that curve adjustment after the fact. Here, if I go and do something else, if I go in here and just make some changes, let's say I go in here and just run a filter for laughable reasons. Let's say I just run a crazy blur on here and I click OK. I can go back into that adjustment panel and there's that curve right where I left it. I can make it lighter, I can make it darker, I can do anything I want because it's an adjustment layer. And you can apply, and you can actually stack adjustment layers on top of other adjustment layers. I'm going to go and undo that blur I did a moment ago. So we still got that adjustment going on. I can apply another one. And I can do it in two ways. I can use that menu in the layers panel, as you can see right here, but I can also use the adjustment panel itself. You know, this is what the adjustment panel looks like when you first open it. And you drag over these icons, it will show you the name of the various adjustments you're doing. So let's say in addition to that curves, I wanted to go ahead and add a levels adjustments, for instance. Well, I'd simply click on that icon and it would add a new adjustment layer, and here's my levels dialog. So let's go ahead and push the sliders in and make this darker. Bring that highlight slider in. And it's given me a very, I'm obviously over adjusting this image, but I think you get the idea of how I can stack multiple corrections on top of each other and being able to actually independently modify them after the fact. Earlier, now if I'd gone and applied a curves and then a levels dialog, just doing it the normal way, going into here, I wouldn't be able to go back and adjust them. And not only that, they're completely separate. So let's say I've applied the curves and then this levels, and I don't like the curves anymore. I can just take that curves adjustment layer and throw it away. And now all I've got is my levels change there. Not only that, you'll notice that there is an additional icon on the layers here as well. Let me go ahead and turn off, let's go ahead and turn off this curves, or the levels actually. This extra icon is actually a layer mask. If you remember talking to me briefly about it back in the layers lessons, I can actually not only apply an adjustment, but I can isolate it to a very specific part of my image. So if I go in here and let's go ahead and fill this layer mask with black. I'm going to go ahead with, and it's highlighted by the little outlines right there. I'm going to press Option Delete. Or rather, we can go under the Edit menu and go down here to Fill. And I'm just going to use black and click OK. Now, it looks like the adjustment has gone away. But all we did was fill this layer mask with black, which makes it completely invisible. Now, if I go and grab my brush tool, and let's go and grab a very soft edge brush here. And we want to paint with white, because white is going to reveal what's on the mask, while filling that layer mask with black will hide it. So with white set as my foreground color, and I go in here and start painting, you notice what's happening. Now it's revealing or bringing back that adjustment inside. So if I wanted to isolate the adjustment to a very small part of my image, I can do that. If I just wanted to darken up these trees down here with that adjustment layer, I can certainly go ahead and do that. And you'll notice it's reflecting inside the layer mask. There's a little white area revealing that correction. So adjustment layers are very, very important, and perhaps the most commonly used tool. I doubt there's many people that use the traditional way. Unless you're going to apply a correction as part of an effect or something like that, you're probably going to want to use adjustment layers to give you much more flexibility when you're working with correcting your images. Now going back into that panel, you'll notice there's a number of different of all those adjustments here represented by icons. You drag over and it shows the name. But there's also a long list of presets down here. So let's go ahead and throw these two adjustment layers away. So let's say, remember I was talking earlier about using auto features to see if it'll correct your images without a lot of headache. Now you have all these presets in here. So let's say I go in here and maybe I want to try the increase contrast 3. So it applies that adjustment as an adjustment layer, and look what it's done to my image. It actually looks pretty good. If I toggle that adjustment layer on and off, looks like I've got a pretty good correction there. So these presets and auto features are usually a good starting point when you're correcting your images. And as you go, you'll start to get more familiar with these adjustment tools and being able to make the changes yourself. But it's, like as I said, very good starting point by trying some of these presets and seeing if it gives you the result you're looking for. So just click on it and apply it. Now obviously that one's way out of whack there, so that's not going to work for what we're doing. You can make it darker. That one actually does look like it might be a pretty good adjustment. Looking pretty good. So a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom, and a lot more ways of isolating the corrections to very specific areas of your image, which is one of the things I love about adjustment layers. So hope that gives you a better idea of how adjustments work. The first lesson we talked about the basics of adjusting, but you're going to want to utilize the adjustment layers inside your images and just have that flexibility and the freedom of stacking them on top of each other and being able to throw various adjustments away whenever you need to.